Hello, it is Thursday, so welcome back to the weekly review of Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This episode being titled Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. I got a feeling this is going to be long because I'm going to be going on, probably will end up going on a little bit of a rant because of what has happened in this episode. So, what do I mean by what's happened in this episode? Well, it's a La'an-centric episode, and I'm not gonna lie, when I realized that it was going to be that, I was a little worried that I wasn't going to like it. Not that I don't like La'an as a character, it's just sometimes character-driven episodes for me, for particular characters in Star Trek, I tend to not like. Prime example being the early season 1 episode with Hoshi Sato, the very first her-centric episode that she got, I really disliked. Anyway, this episode deals with time travel and different timelines. So it basically starts with La'an, doing her security stuff, and then also sparring with Mbenga, because she's still dealing with a lot of stuff, mainly got to do with her past, being a Noonien Singh and all that stuff. And so, as she's walking along a corridor, someone from the future who was in the past has got shot, traveled to her in order for her to fix the timeline because there's been a timeline change, and then we see it happen where this brand new timeline, the captain of the Enterprise, is none other than James T. Kirk. Except it's not a United Federation planet. No, no, no. It's a United Earth ship. Because the entire timeline has changed, and we do see that there is a Vulcan ship nearby him where it's actually captained by Spock. In this timeline, presumably full Vulcan, not half Vulcan, because of this timeline change. And they also make mention of the Romulans. So eventually, Kirk and La'an go back to the 21st century in Toronto. No exact year is given. We can assume that it's 2022, give or take, because of a line mentioned later on. That's my guess. I'm thinking this, or it might actually be a little bit later. I don't know. Definitely in the 2020s to be precise. So as Kirk and La'an are walking around trying to figure out what's changed the timeline, a bridge explodes, and then they talk about how it exists in that bridge explosion exists in both their timelines, not not that it was the thing that to change the timeline, and they get talking with this conspiracy theory nut, and as they're going through some pictures and that, they're shown a Romulan warbird, which, La'an wouldn't know what the warbird looks like because she's never the at this point, the Romulans are still on their side of the border and they haven't been seen since the Earth-Romulan War. But obviously Jim Kirk recognizes it because they're at war with the Romulans. And that's when we learn of what changed in the timeline. The United Federation does not exist. It's United Earth, and that's it. There are no other. There's the Vulcans are by themselves. The Tellarites are by themselves. The Andorians are by themselves. All versus the Romulans in this future timeline, and so then they want to go look for a cold fusion reactor because Kirk realizes that's what the timeline change was, where the cold fusion reactor exploded and wiped out Toronto completely, and so they end up going to the new Enterprise engineers place because she was on Earth at that time, passing as a human, and then they find a way to go track it down. They do. Turns out it's a Noonien Singh place. And La'an is able to actually open the doors, and that's when it's revealed that crazy person who's into all these conspiracy theories is actually a Romulan from the future who traveled back in time to to slow Earth's growth down. And turns out the person she's actually here to stop, it isn't the cold fusion reactor explosion. No, no, no. It's to kill none other than Khan Noonien Singh. And this is where I think this video is going to get a bit long. But eventually, La'an kills this Romulan. She actually talks to Khan. We see a young Khan in this. She doesn't say much. And then she goes back and, she goes to the bridge. We see Pike. We see Number One. We see all of them. And then she goes back to her quarters where she runs into a temporal agent from, the future. That's pre-cold temporal Cold War. Think the Starship Relativity from Voyager. And she basically says, yeah, you can't tell anyone. And then she contacts Lieutenant Kirk. And this is the first proper time now that Prime Kirk has been seen. Because including this episode and the end of season 1, it's been an alternate timeline Kirk. And because in this episode, Kirk gets shot and killed, but again, this is a different Kirk. So she just talks to him because throughout the entire episode, La'an slowly falls in love with Kirk. I mean, it's Kirk. He, as the kids would say, he has the ultimate riz. And the episode ends with her crying. Now that I've recapped that, what did I think of this episode? Well, I actually really enjoyed it to a certain extent. And there's one thing that it seems that Star Trek is now heading down towards that I don't know how I feel. It started with season 2 of Star Trek Picard, and now it's been officially confirmed here, essentially, that the eugenics wars, which is what we thought took place in the 90s, because that's what we were told in the episode Space Seed, is now actually taking place in the 21st century. And is probably now linked with World War III. Which is what it was originally mentioned as World War III in Space Seed, if memory serves correct. But I don't know how I feel about that, because there is a throwaway line of this Romulan saying it should have taken place in 1992, but she's been stuck there for 30 years. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, because it was kind of alluded to at the end of season 2 of Picard, with the past Soong pulling out a file that says Project Khan, and we know that takes place in 2024. So between then and this episode, obviously now we have a young Khan who's, I don't think he's been fully augmented yet. I think he's still in the early development stages of turning into an augment. But this episode was really, I think, for La'an to finally let go of the guilt she has been feeling for being a Soong and being a descendant from Khan. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about the timeline change. I know it's going to annoy a lot of people because it's retconning that. And in a way, I fully understand why it needs to be retconned. Because this is something that was mentioned in a 60s sci-fi show. They mentioned, a lot of different future events that obviously did not happen because when it comes to timelines and Earth and all that stuff. But um, back then, in the 60s, people were making all these wild guesses of what the 1990s would be like, or the early 2000s would have been like. A lot of the times there was mentioned, flying cars, all of this and that. It's not the first time that Star Trek has retconned anything. Just using an example, they retconned Zefram Cochrane's place of birth, because in the season 2 episode where he shows up, it's mentioned that he was born on Alpha Centauri, but in Star Trek First Contact, they hadn't left Earth yet, and so on and so forth. So, does it make sense that the eugenics wars and World War III are kind of merging into the one thing? Maybe. I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about that. And that's the one takeaway that I came out of this episode is I don't know how I feel about them moving up the eugenics wars. And technically it hasn't just been in modern Star Trek. It technically happened with Star Trek Voyager, because we do know that they traveled back to, I think it was 1996, in the height of the eugenics wars back then. And there was zero mention of it, there was zero wars or what have you. So that means it got moved into the 21st century. And so it'll probably start up, when Khan and the other augments become adults, probably in the 2230s, which is when World War III is supposed to take place, and then it won't end until the 2260s or slightly before then, and then the timeline goes on and that. So yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed the character development that La'an got, and I also love that this is the fun fact actually about this episode is this is the episode that got Paul Wesley confirmed as Kirk, because they were filming this episode way before season 1 came out, and because of the whole them filming, they had to announce that he was Kirk. Otherwise it would have been leaked. Take the Doctor Who approach. They announce people who are coming back before they film, so it doesn't get leaked to the press beforehand. Now, actually, before I do wrap this up, Paul Wesley, this is now the second episode he has appeared in as James T. Kirk. And I know for myself and a lot of other people that when he first appeared in the season 1, episode 10, a lot of people didn't like his interpretation of Kirk. It doesn't feel Shatnery or even Chris Piney. It just doesn't feel like Kirk. And even in this episode, there are some moments where it feels like Kirk, but there are other moments where it just feels like a poor imitation of Kirk. That's nothing against Paul Wesley, though. He is doing the best he can to be Kirk. He's doing his best to be Shatner, essentially. But I still don't buy that he's Kirk. Whereas I bought, Chris Pine was Kirk. But that's actually going to wrap up this review. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Tomorrow I have my Star Trek Series 2 review as a first time watch. That will be out tomorrow. And then, of course, I'll see you back here next Thursday for another brand new Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 review. I'll see you all next time.